Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. The Wild West has been dressed up in endless Hollywood myths. Clean-shaven cowboys tip their hats, campfires glow under perfect starlight, and saloons swing with piano tunes before a neatly staged shootout. But what was it actually like to sleep there? To lay your body down in a land of dust, disease, drunken strangers, and more rattlesnakes than stars overhead? Well, tonight we'll find out. Before we dive in, if you enjoy these long, slow journeys into the gritty details of the past, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see this little global campfire of ours, burning from New York to Sydney, from Berlin to Manila. So, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, like a prairie wind moving across the plains. Settle in, let your shoulders drop, and together we'll slip into tonight's story. Tonight's journey, what sleeping in the Wild West was really like. Forget the movie version where a cowboy pulls a blanket up to his chin and sleeps peacefully by the fire, snoring like some lovable hero. Reality was rougher, itchier, and far less forgiving. Beds, when they existed, sagged with broken straw, lice or mice nibbling the corners. Out on the trail, sleep meant tossing on dirt or rock-hard ground, the air alive with wolves and coyotes. In towns, sleep often meant shivering in a boarding house filled with coughing strangers, praying no one stole your boots while you dozed. For some, it meant a tent rattling all night in the wind, with rain dripping straight through the canvas seams. For others, it was curling up in the back of a wagon, your spine bent like an old fence post, trying to ignore the smell of wet ox hides. Even the fancy hotels in boomtowns weren't much better. Thin walls, thin mattresses, and a symphony of late-night noises that reminded you weren't quite safe, not even in bed. But this isn't just about where people laid down. It's about what they feared when they closed their eyes. Fire sweeping through a wooden town while you slept. A knife in the dark from a drunk with a grudge. Waking up to frost on your beard because the night got colder than you thought it would. And yes, the ever-present company of fleas, bedbugs, and worse. The Wild West wasn't built for comfort. It was built for survival. And sleep, the one refuge you hope for after a brutal day, wasn't always guaranteed. So tonight, we're going to walk through it piece by piece. We'll wake up in a dusty western room. We'll taste the stale biscuits and bitter coffee of the morning. We'll scratch through the wool blankets and watch the shadows move across cabin walls. We'll sit around fires where sleep was fragile, thin, and constantly interrupted. Because when you close your eyes in the Wild West, you're never fully safe. Sleep is just another gamble. So settle in now. Breathe slower. Imagine the faint glow of an oil lamp, the whine of wind against thin walls, the rough crunch of straw beneath your body. That's where we begin. And with that, let's ride straight into the first chapter of our story. What sleeping in the Wild West was really like. You wake up to the sound of wind pushing dry air through a cracked wooden wall. There's no alarm clock, just the aching creak of your spine and the slow realization that your leg has gone numb from sleeping at a bad angle. Again. One eye opens to find the same cracked ceiling you saw last night. Slumped beams held together by age and guesswork. The room is cold, not brisk. Cold. The kind of chill that slides under your clothes and rests there like a warning. You shift slightly, careful not to disturb the paper-thin walls. They creak back anyway, like they're complaining. The mattress, if you can call it that, is stuffed with whatever could be found. Straw, horsehair, some old cotton maybe. It smells like dust and mildew and something faintly sour, like sweat that's been baked in over a dozen desperate nights. Every movement sends a small cloud of smell into the air. You scratch your leg. Fleas again. Or maybe just phantom itches. You're not sure anymore. Your blanket isn't a comforter. It's a worn-out quilt with patches from 3 different lifetimes. One edge has been sewn and re-sewn so many times it looks more like a fringe than a hem. And it's thin. Useless, really. Cold air snakes beneath it like it's got a vendetta. You pull it tighter anyway. Outside, the town is waking up. You hear the groan of wagon wheels moving past the dirt street. Hooves clop in rhythm. A delivery cart, or maybe just someone passing through, moving slow because every step out here costs energy. A cough erupts nearby, followed by spitting. Somebody's awake in the next room. Probably the old miner who sleeps in his boots and never says good morning. There's no insulation between you and them. Just wooden planks, uneven and splintering. You can hear everything. Every cough, every word, every creak of a bed that definitely wasn't built for comfort or quiet. Your room is about 7 feet wide. Maybe 10 long if you count the broken washstand shoved into the corner. 1 chair, 1 window. But don't expect sunlight. The glass is filthy and cracked, and half of it's been patched with waxed paper. You can barely tell if it's morning or still too early, but the cold tells you it's time to get up. You swing your legs over the edge. The floor is worse. Cold boards, rough and warped, some with nail heads that threaten to rip your socks. If you remembered to take your boots off last night, they're probably near the door. Cold, stiff, and maybe harboring a spider. If you forgot, then you slept in them, again. And your feet are paying the price. There's no fireplace in your room. Heat is a luxury that belongs to saloons and big houses with carved wood front doors. If there's warmth in this building, it's leaking up from the kitchen stove downstairs, if someone's bothered to light it. You sit for a moment, letting your joints remember how to move. Shoulders stiff, back sore, knees questionable. You're probably 28 years old, but you feel 60. That's just how it works out here. The West doesn't age people so much as it wears them down like river rocks. Smooth, brittle, and shaped by every hard night that came before. As you start to stand, your foot lands on something that crunches. A mouse? No. Just a dead cockroach. Big one. You sigh and kick it toward the wall, making a mental note to block that hole under the floorboard. Not that it'll help. Nothing short of divine intervention keeps the critters out. You splash water on your face, what's left in a tin basin from yesterday. It's cold, sharp as needles. No mirror in here. You use the metal to catch your reflection, warped and dull. Your face looks tired, dirty in places. You wipe it with a threadbare cloth that used to be white but is now some color that's best not identified. You dress in layers, always layers, even in warmer months. The temperature shifts fast out here. Shirt, wool undershirt, pants held up by a belt that's on its last hole. Your coat still smells like smoke from the fire 2 nights ago, but at least it's dry. You sit on the edge of the bed again, looking at your boots. There's a moment. You don't want to put them on. You don't want to stand on that cold floor again. You don't want to go outside. Feel the wind slice through your coat. Hear the sheriff yelling at someone already drunk before breakfast. But you do it. Because you have to. You don't sleep in the Wild West. Not really. You nap with one eye open. You close your body down like a cautious machine. But your ears stay on, listening for footsteps, for breaking glass, for the sound of your horse panicking in the stable because someone's tried to steal it again. Last night, the saloon stayed open late. You heard the piano for a while, then a crash, then silence. Probably a fight. Or worse. You didn't go check. You just pulled your coat over your head and waited for quiet. And now here you are, morning again. Whatever that means out here. The sky is dusty blue. The air smells like smoke and manure and old coffee. You survived the night. That's all anyone hopes for. You lace up your boots and stand. The walls creak again. You listen for movement in the hallway. Nothing. Time to start the day. And tonight, if you're lucky, you'll sleep again. Maybe better. Probably not. But for now, you're still standing. And in the Wild West, that's something. You make your way downstairs, every board of the hallway groaning like it resents your weight. You don't walk so much as tiptoe in boots, because nothing in this building was built to be quiet or level. The stairs creak with the kind of tone that makes you wonder if today's the day they finally give out. The saloon downstairs is quiet now. Chairs are turned over, a few mugs still sitting half full with beer gone flat. The barkeep's asleep in the corner booth, mouth open, one hand still resting on a bottle. You step over a trail of peanut shells and broken glass and push open the back door into the gray light of morning. The air smells like yesterday. Wood smoke, manure, and something acidic from the stables. There's a fog of dust hanging low, stirred by the first wagons of the day rattling over the dry earth. You take a deep breath and regret it instantly. Still, you need food, or something close to it. There's no kitchen in your room, no pantry, and definitely no breakfast buffet waiting politely behind a sneeze guard. Breakfast out here is what you can get. Sometimes that means biscuits. Sometimes that means jerky. Sometimes it means nothing at all. You wander toward the boarding house kitchen, if you're staying in one. Or maybe over to the general store, if you've got a few coins and a strong stomach. Your boots scuff the dry ground, kicking up little clouds of dust that cling to your cuffs like they're trying to come inside too. Inside the kitchen, the air is thick. Grease, smoke, stale coffee, the holy trinity of frontier cuisine. A woman's at the stove already sweating despite the cold. Her hair is pinned back, her sleeves rolled, and she's frying something in a black iron pan that probably hasn't been properly scrubbed since Lincoln was clean-shaven. She doesn't look up. She doesn't need to. She knows you're hungry. Everybody's hungry out here. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a biscuit. If there's flour, and some kind of meat that's been salted past the point of memory. Might be pork. Might be possum. Nobody asks. You get a chunk of it on a dented tin plate. served with a slab of bread that fights your teeth with every bite. And coffee. Black, bitter, strong enough to dissolve guilt. Made with grounds that have been used at least twice already. Sometimes it's boiled with eggshells to take the edge off. Sometimes not. Either way, it goes down like regret and fire. You drink it because it's hot, and because your choices are limited. If you're lucky, assume. And today you're not. There's honey or jam, but fruit is rare and sugar is expensive. Eggs, maybe, if someone's chicken got generous or careless. Most days you eat what's set down and say thank you, even if it tastes like ash and irony. Now hygiene, that beautiful, impossible dream. There's no bathroom, not in your room, not in the house, not in the town, really. Out back, there's an outhouse, and if you're lucky, it's been recently shoveled. The smell hits you from 10 paces out, a layered horror of rot, lie, and bodily regret. Inside, it's dark, damp, and infested with flies that have absolutely no respect for personal boundaries. You do your business quickly, because every second in that little wooden box is a gamble. Toilet paper? That's a luxury. You've got a square of torn newspaper, maybe a bit of cloth, or just dry corn cobs stacked politely in a basket. You choose quickly and try not to think too hard about who came before you. Afterward, you wash your hands. That is, you rub them on your pants and splash from a communal basin filled with cloudy water and floating mysteries. No soap, just a hope that friction counts for something. And brushing your teeth? That's a laugh. Maybe you chew on a willow twig if you're feeling fancy, or rinse with whiskey and pretend it's medicinal. Your teeth ache in the cold. One of them's loose. You wiggle it with your tongue and wince. There's no dentist here, not unless a traveling one rides in and sets up next to the undertaker. Bathing is worse. You can go to the bathhouse, if the town has one, or pay a coin to sit in a wooden tub behind the saloon. That tub has seen things, been through things, and it hasn't been drained since someone named Slick Pete used it last Tuesday. You sink in slowly, ignoring the layer of grime that floats to the top like a soup of human history. Hot water is a negotiation. It takes time, wood, effort. Most of the time, you make do with a sponge and a bucket, or you just don't bathe. You rub yourself with a cloth, change your shirt, and call it progress. Your clothes don't help. You've worn the same shirt for 6 days. It itches in places you can't reach. Your socks smell like betrayal. You shake them out and pray nothing crawls out with them. If you're a woman, it's worse. No privacy, no plumbing, no margin for error. Hygiene becomes a game of strategy, a jug of water, a rag, and a prayer. Menstrual care? Rags, cloth, wadded fabric hidden away and washed when no one's looking. You're supposed to be clean, composed, presentable, while living in a world that barely lets you rinse your hands. And still, you try. You scrape under your nails. You comb your hair with fingers. You swat flies and wipe your face with a sleeve. You spit in the dust and keep walking. You've eaten just enough to stand straight. You've scrubbed just enough to feel human. Now the day begins. Work waits. The trail waits. The heat, the wind, the drudgery. They all wait. You step outside, already smelling like smoke and dirt. But out here, that's just called normal. You step out into the morning air, dressed for the day, not because you feel ready, but because the weather, the road, and your own dignity demand it. But in the Wild West, clothing isn't style. It's armor. It's insulation. It's a statement that says, I've survived worse and I'll probably survive today too. Your shirt is wool or cotton, maybe flannel if you've hit a lucky streak. Stiff from old sweat, sun-dried lye soap, and too many days of being worn straight through without pause. The collar has frayed edges, and one of the buttons is missing. You've replaced it with twine, or a safety pin, or just nothing at all. Modesty takes a back seat when the heat's high, and your only clean shirt is 6 counties away. Your trousers? Rough, heavy canvas or denim, thick enough to stand up on their own, and probably older than your boots. They're caked with dust, sweat, and stains that no one dares identify anymore. Pockets sag from use. One leg has been patched 3 times, and the last repair job was done by candlelight and impatience. The thread doesn't match. You don't care. Out here, nobody does. Underwear is optional, not because it's fashionable, but because laundry is a luxury and time is short. Some go without. Some reuse. Some wear long johns year-round, sweating through summer and freezing through winter with the same cursed layer. They're itchy, sagging, and probably home to more than just you. If you've got a vest, and many do, it's both function and fantasy. Pockets for your watch, your knife, your last coin. It's stained from pipe smoke, stretched across the chest, and barely holds together. But it makes you feel marginally more respectable. In a town where everyone's trying to look tougher or richer than they are, a vest is a good lie. Then there's the coat. It's not clean, it's not fashionable, but it's thick, usually wool or oilcloth, sometimes canvas. It's stiff with the weight of the trail, the barroom floor, and at least one night sleeping in the rain. Inside there may be a flask, or a letter you keep folded tight and unread. Maybe just a couple of bullets you forgot to return to your belt. Your boots are your lifeline. Scuffed, worn, broken in until they've memorized the shape of your feet. The soles have been replaced, maybe. Or maybe they're just soft enough now that you can feel every pebble like an insult. They creak when you walk. They ache when you don't. If they leak, too bad. If they're stiff, you beat them with your fists until they're not. And you never, ever leave them unattended. A man without his boots in the West might as well be barefoot on the moon. And on your head? A hat. Wide-brimmed, stained and weathered. Felt if you're lucky, straw if it's summer. Maybe a hand-me-down. Maybe stolen. Doesn't matter. The sun out here isn't just hot. It's personal. That hat's your shade, your shield, your statement. Lose it, and you're just another fool squinting into the unforgiving sky. Now let's talk about shelter. Because out here, home isn't comfort. It's protection, and barely. If you live in town, your house, or rented room, is made of wood. Thin boards nailed together with hope and bad math. Gaps between the planks let in wind, bugs, gossip, and sometimes daylight. In summer it bakes. In winter it freezes. In storms it groans like an old man being asked to stand up too quickly. Roofs leak, floors creak, doors don't close so much as lean together and hope no one notices. You might stuff rags in the cracks, hang a coat over the window, or nail old newspaper to the walls just to keep the draft from slicing your sleep in half. The walls have no insulation, just splinters and regrets. Paint, if there is any, peels like old skin, and the entire structure smells faintly of mold, tobacco, and wet wool. You get used to it, or you don't. Either way, it's yours. If you're sleeping in a bunkhouse, privacy is a rumor. You're lined up beside men who snore, cough, scratch themselves in their sleep, and occasionally scream out nightmares about something they won't talk about come morning. The bunks are hard. The blankets are thinner than promises. You make do. On the trail, you don't even get wood. You get a bedroll and a flat patch of ground, if you're lucky. You sleep under the stars, which sounds romantic until it rains, or snows, or the wind kicks up dust so fine it sneaks into your ears and teeth. Your shelter might be a canvas stretched between two sticks, a tree with good branches, or nothing but your coat over your face. Snakes like your warmth. So do scorpions. And raccoons if you've got jerky in your pack. Coyotes sing lullabies that don't end. And somewhere in the dark, something's always rustling. Maybe a tumbleweed. Maybe a stranger. You wrap yourself in your blanket like a burrito of paranoia, hoping the fire doesn't go out before dawn. Because if it does, the cold comes, and it comes fast. In mining towns, housing might be a shanty thrown up with scrap wood, cardboard, and tin roofing stolen from the blacksmith's failed ambitions. Lean-tos lined with flour sacks, dirt floors with rugs that used to be curtains, outhouses nearby, if you're civilized, a ditch if you're not. You share walls with people you don't trust and floors with things you don't want to name. Fires spread fast. So do fights. You learn to sleep light, boots on, bag close, revolver nearer. Not because you're scared, just because you're smart. And if you're a woman, multiply all of that. You sleep in a boarding room that's supposed to be for ladies, with lace curtains and a rickety lock on the door. A lock that might stop the wind, but not much else. Your clothes are layered, buttoned, and stitched until they nearly strangle you. But modesty's the law. Comfort be damned. Every garment is armor. Every shelter a gamble. And yet, people call it freedom. You get dressed in the morning knowing full well the day may unravel your seams. You go home at night hoping your roof holds, your fire doesn't go out, and no one finds your hiding place. And still, you get up the next day and do it again. Because out here, there's no backup plan. Just the coat on your back, the boots on your feet, and a roof that might hold another winter, if you're lucky. You don't live in the Wild West. You endure it. One patch, one board, one cold night at a time. There's no such thing as a lazy morning in the Wild West. You don't wake up slowly, stretch luxuriously, and consider a second cup of coffee. You wake up because something demands it. A noise, a draft. The sun stabbing you in the face through a crooked gap in the wall. You wake up sore, tired, and already behind schedule. And then you go to work. But this isn't show up at the office and answer some mail kind of work. This is survival work. Back-breaking, skin-blistering, spirit-grinding labor that starts before your joints are ready and doesn't stop until they've given up entirely. If you're a ranch hand, congratulations. You get the honor of chasing stubborn cows across miles of unforgiving land while covered in dust, rope burns, and horse sweat. You're up before dawn, often still half asleep, saddle already in hand. Your horse is ornery. The cattle are worse. You swing up into the saddle and ride out into a wide, empty world full of hooves, horns, and the constant threat of being trampled by your own job. You ride through prairie dog holes and thorn thickets, through heat that bakes the inside of your hat and cold that stiffens your fingers around the reins. You patch fences with splinters in your palms and string barbed wire until your hands bleed. There are no gloves thick enough. You get kicked, stomped, and once, memorably, bitten by a cow. Lunch, when it happens, is jerky in your saddlebag and a swig from your canteen. No shade, no table, just you, chewing with one eye on the horizon for a steer with attitude. If you're a miner, your day begins deep underground in air that smells like wet stone, sweat, and dynamite residue. The walls close in around you like a bad debt. You swing a pick until your shoulders scream. You carry loads that bow your spine and give you coughs that don't go away. You squint in the dim lantern light, praying you don't hear water dripping, because that means collapse, or gas, or worse. You work until your arms go numb. You wipe your face and your hand comes back black. No one talks much. There's no reason. Nothing to say except watch your step and don't breathe too deep. And if you're lucky enough to be working above ground, say building a railroad, you get sunburned instead of coal-burned. You hammer spikes into uncooperative rails, carry timber like it's personal, and dodge boulders rolling downhill with all the speed of your lost dreams. Wages are low, days are long, and every tool you touch is designed to outlast your bones. Now maybe you're a farmer, a homesteader, one of the lucky ones with your name on a deed and land to work. But don't fool yourself. That land doesn't care about you. It's dry, rocky, and mean-spirited. You plow behind oxen so stubborn you wonder if they're part mule. Your hands blister on the wooden handles. The sun beats down on your back until your skin splits. You plant seed in rows, watching for signs of rain like a desperate gambler watching a crooked deck. And when it doesn't come, you dig ditches, pray, and start planning how you'll survive the winter on a diet of hope and boiled roots. If you've got animals, they come first. Always. You feed them before yourself. Clean their stalls before your own bed. Milk the cow, shovel the manure, patch the fence, haul the water. And every step of it is hard. And if something breaks, a wheel, a stove, a roof beam, you fix it, or you don't survive. There are no specialists out here. You are the blacksmith, the carpenter, the vet, the plumber, and the doctor. If something goes wrong and you don't know how to handle it, well, you learn. Fast. Or you pay for it later. Even easy jobs aren't easy. Let's say you're a saloon girl. You wear tight corsets, heavy skirts, layers of paint on your face, and a smile that never quite reaches your eyes. You flirt, dance, pour drinks, and dodge hands that think they've paid for more than whiskey. You sleep light, always ready to grab the knife under your pillow. You work until your feet bleed, then you keep working because the man who runs the place doesn't care if you're tired. Maybe you run a general store, but that just means you're a banker, a trader, a warehouse worker, and a therapist all rolled into one. People come in with stories, debts, threats, and occasionally a pig to barter for gunpowder. You sweep the same floor 50 times and never find the end of the dust. If you're a blacksmith, your life is heat and hammer. You work in a haze of soot and flame, shaping iron like it owes you something. You lift tools heavier than your own hopes, working muscles that haven't stopped aching since you were 15. You sweat so much your shirt fuses to your back. And your reward? A few coins, a handshake, and another order for more nails by next week. No matter your job, one truth remains. There is no rest without labor, and even rest isn't really rest. It's a pause before the next demand. There's no such thing as time off, no sick days. You can't call out of work in the Wild West. You work or you starve. You haul, swing, ride, dig, scrub, mend, butcher, sew, boil, hammer, or bleed. And if you're too weak, someone else gets your spot. Even the weather works against you. Dust storms rip the sky open and dump half the desert in your food. Thunderstorms flood the streets. Lightning strikes barns. Hail flattens crops. Winters freeze you solid. Summers try to cook you from the inside out. And still, you go on. Because that's the code out here. You don't complain. You don't break. You endure. And at the end of the day, when your hands are shaking, your skin is cracked, and your stomach growls like a mad dog, you crawl back into your room or your tent or your wagon. You lie back on your straw mattress, boots off, hat over your face, and maybe, just maybe, you sleep. If you're lucky, nothing wakes you before dawn. If you're not, well, there's always tomorrow. If you live to see it. Out in the Wild West, belief wasn't just something you thought. It was something you clung to, like a fence post in a flood, like the last bullet in your revolver. When life is one long string of dust, sweat, and near misses, you start reaching for anything that promises meaning, even if it's shaped like a rusty horseshoe nailed above a crooked door. Religion was everywhere, but not the kind with gold candlesticks and incense. No choirs, no pipe organs. This was a rougher kind of faith. Lean, cracked, calloused, and carried on the backs of people who had seen too much and trusted too little. Churches existed, sure. Tiny wooden buildings often leaning sideways, with warped steeples and hard benches that taught you as much about pain as they did about heaven. The preacher might have been a proper man, ordained and lettered, or he might have been a reformed drunk who found God in the bottom of a whiskey bottle and decided to share his findings. But whoever stood at that pulpit, their words mattered. You listened. Because Sunday might be your only chance to sit still and feel human again. To remember there was something bigger than horses, hunger, and unpaid debts. Out here, Protestant Christianity ruled. Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, sometimes Catholics, especially farther south or in mining towns filled with immigrants. Services were simple. Hymns sung a little off-key, sermons that thundered about sin and salvation, and prayers offered with dry lips and dirt under the nails. You didn't dress fancy. You dressed clean if you could. The Sabbath wasn't about rest. It was about survival with manners. You came to church because it meant community. It meant safety, at least for an hour. But under that layer of scripture and sanctified wood smoke was something older, quieter, more personal, superstition, the real gospel of the frontier. You didn't talk about it much, not in polite company. But everyone had their little rituals, their just-in-case habits, their whispered warnings passed down like recipes and hidden maps. You tied red thread around a baby's wrist to ward off sickness. You never killed a spider after sundown. You threw spilled salt over your left shoulder and crossed yourself before crossing a river. You nailed a horseshoe above your doorway, open end up, to catch luck, not let it spill. God help you if someone turned it the wrong way. And dreams, those mattered. Out here, dreams weren't nonsense. They were signs, prophecies, warnings wrapped in fog. If you dreamed of snakes, it meant betrayal. If you dreamed of a funeral, someone was about to die, maybe even you. Death was always lurking, and superstition was your way of negotiating with it. If a bird flew into the house, a bad omen. If your dog howled 3 nights in a row, death's coming. If you heard a knock and no one was there, you didn't open the door. That was something else knocking. Native beliefs mingled with settler fears. The land itself seemed alive, and people who'd lived on it far longer than you believed it held spirits, some good, many not. Settlers picked up whispers of these things, twisted them into their own versions, then passed them around like ghost stories with real consequences. A stretch of trail where horses always stumbled became cursed. A mine where 4 men died in 1 week? Hexed. A certain rock formation on the ridge. Don't look at it too long. Bad dreams. The desert had rules. You didn't whistle at night. You didn't take anything from a grave. You didn't mock the dead. And if you found an arrowhead or pottery in the dirt, you left it alone, not out of respect, but because people who took those things often didn't live long enough to explain why. Travelers and strangers brought their own beliefs. Irish immigrants with tales of banshees, German settlers with their folk remedies and death lore, Mexicans with tales of La Llorona, the weeping woman who steals children near the water. You might not believe any of it until you heard something crying out by the creek one night. Then you believed. And if you didn't believe, you pretended, just in case, because the Wild West was full of just in case. You might carry a Bible in your pocket, not just for the scripture, but because it stopped a bullet once, and that's good enough reason to keep it. You might carve a cross into your saddle horn. You might never ride on the 13th of any month. You said God bless after sneezes and God help me after bad luck. You mumbled Hail Marys when the wind blew strange. You lit candles in windows, not just to light the way, but to keep something else out. And sometimes, despite all the logic in your head, you made choices based on omens. You don't take the shortcut if the black dog crosses your path. You don't bed down near a dry creek. Too many bones there. You don't go to sleep with your feet pointing toward the door. That's how corpses lie. And the devil? Oh, he was out here too. Not with horns and a red cape, but with a crooked grin in a poker game, a bottle with no label, a deal that sounds just a little too good. You didn't say his name at night. Not if you wanted to sleep. And then there were the miracles, because not everything was bad. You saw a child live through fever, a man walk again after breaking everything but his pride, a woman find her husband after a year of silence. And when those things happened, you didn't question them. You just said, "Praise be," and moved on, like you didn't almost weep. Out here, Faith wasn't delicate. It was rough and dusty, carried in pockets and whispered through cracked lips. You prayed because the world was bigger than you, and because nothing else explained why you hadn't died yet. You might not go to church every week. You might curse the sky when your crops failed. But when thunder rolled in without warning, or your child's cough didn't stop, or something moved in the dark where no thing should be, you lit a candle. You knelt. You begged. Because if the West teaches you anything, it's that there's always something unseen watching. And on those nights when the wind moans like a lost soul, and the coyotes cry too close, and your fire starts to dim, you clutch your charm, your cross, your coin, your prayer, and you say, "Just one more night, Lord. Get me through one more night." You don't eat in the Wild West for pleasure. You eat to keep moving. Food is fuel, nothing more, and sometimes not even that. When you sit down to eat, if you sit at all, you're not expecting a feast. You're hoping for something hot, not spoiled, and ideally not still moving. That's a good meal out here. Breakfast, as you've already learned, is typically hard biscuits, jerky, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Lunch, if it happens, is whatever you didn't eat for breakfast, shoved into your coat pocket or saddlebag, and gnawed on somewhere between one miserable task and the next. But dinner. Now dinner is where the West shows its teeth. Out on the trail, it's cooked over a fire. If you found wood or buffalo chips or anything that'll burn without choking the entire camp. You crouch beside the flames while a pot of beans bubbles thickly, occasionally stirred by someone who used to be a cook, maybe, or just got volunteered because they weren't fast enough to say no. The menu? Beans, salt pork, more beans, maybe a slab of bread if there's flour left, maybe a stew if you were lucky enough to trap something earlier that didn't try to kill you first. And yes, spoilage is a concern. There's no refrigeration. There's no ice unless it's winter and you're outside. If the meat smells funny, you cook it longer and hope your stomach's tougher than your nose. If it moves, you throw it in the fire and call it extra protein. Botulism isn't a theory. It's a threat. Flies are always present. They don't knock. They don't ask. They land on your food, your face, your fork. You swat them lazily, not even expecting to win. Water? It's a gamble. You boil it when you can. You pray when you can't. Dysentery waits like an old friend who drops by whenever you forget to filter. If you've got coin and you're in town, you might treat yourself to a plate at the saloon kitchen, or more commonly, a boarding house cook. You get stew, usually made from mystery meat and last week's vegetables. The taste varies between surprisingly edible and culinary war crime. You might eat cornbread, grits, maybe a little salted fish, but never expect freshness. Everything is preserved, dried, pickled, or suspiciously chewy. Spices, only if someone just got back from Santa Fe or smuggled them in under the preacher's nose. And still, when the food is hot, and the day's over, and you're sitting next to someone who isn't yelling, it almost feels like peace. Now, let's talk drink. Because out here, alcohol is less a beverage and more a coping mechanism. Whiskey is king, and also jester, judge, and executioner. It's cheap, strong, and unregulated. Sometimes it's cut with turpentine, sometimes with tobacco spit, sometimes with whatever was under the bar. You drink it anyway. Beer exists, but it's usually warm, flat, and smells like regret. Wine? That's for church, fancy folks, or fools. Sarsaparilla if you're feeling clean. But most of the time, it's the bottle or nothing. People drink to forget, to celebrate, to dull the pain of a toothache, a heartbreak, or a bullet wound. The saloon becomes a second home, loud, smoky, and dangerous. But at least it has chairs, and that's where entertainment begins. You walk into a saloon and it hits you. The noise, the heat, the smell of stale beer, sweat, and 1,000 bad decisions packed into one room. Piano playing in the corner. Too fast. A little off-key. A man with more mustache than sense is telling a story that absolutely didn't happen. The bartender is always watching, always polishing the same glass, always reaching for something just under the counter. You pay him respect, even if you don't tip. At the bar, you'll find cowboys, miners, drifters, and gamblers, each trying to pretend today didn't happen, or tomorrow won't. Cards are slapped down in clouds of dust. Coins clink. Fists sometimes follow. Gambling is the main event. Poker, faro, dice. You win big or lose your shirt. Sometimes you lose more than that. Arguments get settled with revolvers. The rules are simple. Don't cheat unless you're very good at it. And don't accuse someone unless you're ready to get shot. You might hear someone shout. Someone laugh too loudly. Someone sing badly. You might see a fight start over a spilled drink or an insult no one else even heard. You stay out of it. That's someone else's evening to ruin. And then there are the dancing girls, or as the respectable folks call them, entertainers. Their lives are hard, their smiles forced, their boots heavier than they look. But when they dance, the room goes quiet. For a minute, everything feels like a different story. They dance for tips, for attention, for survival. Sometimes they sing, sometimes they just walk through the crowd pretending they're not scared. The bravest woman in the West isn't the one who shoots straight. It's the one who survives Saturday night in a room full of drunk cowboys. Outdoors, there's the occasional town fair or market day. Horses being shown off, pies being judged, someone trying to sell a miracle tonic that definitely won't kill you. Kids run barefoot. Old men spit tobacco juice and argue about fence lines. Music comes in fits, someone with a fiddle, someone with a harmonica. If you're lucky, a banjo. People gather, sway, stomp, and forget the dust for an hour or two. And when night falls, stories come out, around campfires, on porches, in bunkhouses. Stories of ghosts, outlaws, gold, lost love, bad deals, and worse hangovers. Some are true, most aren't. But it doesn't matter. The West runs on stories the way a train runs on coal. Dirty, loud, and too fast to stop. You laugh, you drink, you listen. And for a moment, you almost believe it's not so bad out here, that you can keep going, that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow's stew won't be so chewy. And when you finally get back to your bed, stiff, sore, full of questionable meat and cheaper whiskey, you collapse sideways and whisper to yourself, "At least I didn't die of boredom." You wake in the night, coughing, a sharp, rattling sound that echoes off the wood walls of your room like a warning. At first, you think it's just dust in your throat, or last night's whiskey catching up with your lungs. But the cough doesn't stop. It clings to your ribs, grows louder, deeper. And that's when the fear starts. Because out here, in the Wild West, a cough isn't just a cough. It's a whisper of something worse. Illness doesn't knock out here. It just walks right in. There are no sealed doors, no sanitized hospitals, no urgent care on the corner. Just dirt floors, cold nights, and the ever-present truth that your body can and will betray you without warning. And when it does, you have very few options. Let's start with the obvious. Medicine in the Wild West is optimistic. There are doctors, yes, but most towns only have one, maybe, sometimes none at all. And the man calling himself doctor might just be someone who once owned a medical book and a clean pair of gloves. You're more likely to be treated by a barber, a blacksmith, or a traveling salesman with bottles full of snake oil and good intentions. And if you do find a proper doctor, brace yourself. There's no anesthesia, not unless you count whiskey or biting down on a leather strap. Surgery happens on a kitchen table, under candlelight, with someone holding your legs so you don't kick the doctor in the face. Tools are boiled, if the doctor remembers. Infection is a coin toss. Germs? That's a theory still gaining traction. Some doctors believe in washing hands. Others don't. Most of them will gladly cut open a man with a rusty scalpel and move on to the next patient with the same hands and half a sleeve wiped clean. Got a toothache? You'll lose the tooth. A broken bone? Hope it's a clean break. Otherwise, it's splinted badly or rebroken on purpose. Gunshot wound? If it didn't kill you instantly, it probably will by the end of the week. Antibiotics don't exist. Not yet. Penicillin is still a distant dream. If you get an infection, they'll bleed you, or give you herbs, or pray. And yet, somehow, people survive. Some of them. You've seen someone die from a fever that started mild. You've seen a woman drop from the flu. You've watched children fade from measles, scarlet fever, whooping cough, and diphtheria, all before their 4th birthdays. And the worst? Cholera. It comes fast, hits hard, and leaves entire camps empty by morning. You go to sleep fine and wake up with cramps, vomiting, diarrhea, then cold sweats, then nothing at all. It spreads through water. But out here, all water is suspect. Typhoid and dysentery follow the same path. Dirty hands, dirty wells, dirty everything. You don't even have to be filthy, just unlucky. Tuberculosis, or consumption, is the long, slow killer. It takes weeks, sometimes months. The cough worsens, you lose weight, you pale, you sweat through your sheets at night. And when the blood finally comes, coughed up, bright and terrifying, you know it's almost over. There are treatments, of course, if you can afford them. Laudanum, a miracle and a monster in the same bottle. A tincture of opium and alcohol, handed out for everything from headaches to childbirth. It calms you. It silences pain. And it doesn't care what else it silences along the way. Many die with a bottle half full by the bed. Others become ghosts long before they stop breathing. Addicted, dazed, lost in a fog they never asked for. Whiskey does the same job. Burns through pain, dulls the fear, It's cheaper, easier to find, and doesn't ask questions. But it kills the liver and the judgment. Herbs are common too. Dried bundles hung in windows or steeped in boiled water. Some heal, some harm. Elderberry, willow bark, echinacea, pennyroyal, foxglove. The line between remedy and poison is thin, and not everyone knows where it runs. You might see a midwife, wise, sharp-eyed, with hands steadier than most doctors. She knows how to set a bone, turn a breech baby, mix a poultice that'll draw out a fever. She learned from her mother, and her mother before her. She doesn't always explain how she knows what she knows, but people trust her. They have to. And yes, there's superstition here too. People wear charms to ward off sickness, hang garlic above the bed, mark their doors with chalk. Some believe in prayer, others in smoke, a few in nothing at all, because too many prayers have gone unanswered. When someone dies, they're laid out in the parlor, or whatever room can be cleared. Coins on the eyes, hands folded, candles lit. Neighbors come with food, not because you're so hungry, but because cooking is too much after death visits your home. Death is casual out here. It doesn't dress up, doesn't whisper. It shows up in the middle of dinner and sits down like it owns the place. You've buried children, parents, friends. You've dug graves in hard earth and cried without sound because there's no time for grief. And at night, when you lie back down in that itchy bed, you think about your own body, how fragile it is, how one cough, one bad drink of water, one unlucky wound could end everything. That's why you sleep with your boots nearby, your knife under the pillow. That's why you pray, even if you don't believe. Because if death comes for you tonight, you'd at least like to go out with your coat on. Still, people laugh. They joke about how many bullets the doctor took to the knee during the war, about how the preacher cures headaches with whiskey and hymns. They laugh because the alternative is screaming. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. Out here, the strongest don't always survive. The smartest don't always make it. And the most faithful still die coughing. So you savor what you can. You eat, drink, spit, curse, kiss, pray. Whatever gets you through the day. Because tomorrow's just another chance to catch something you can't name. And hope you don't. If the Wild West was a fire, then women were the ones standing in the smoke, holding everything up while it burned. They weren't just wives or mothers or daughters. They were laborers, medics, protectors, teachers, cooks, and more often than not, the only thing standing between a bad day and total collapse. Life for a woman in the West started early, before sunrise usually, and ended only when the last child was asleep, the last pot scrubbed, and the front door was bolted against the unknown. She'd rise from the same lumpy mattress as everyone else, sore from the hard day before, and immediately get to work. No makeup, no mirror, no morning scroll, just cold water in a basin, a rough cloth, and a prayer that no one comes down with a fever that day. Breakfast doesn't cook itself, and the fire doesn't light without her hands. She splits kindling, starts the stove, kneads dough, hauls water, churns butter, bottles preserves, all before most men have fully opened their eyes. She feeds everyone else first. She always does. Maybe she gets the end of the biscuit, or the smaller half of the egg. Maybe she doesn't eat until noon. No one asks. No one notices. It's just how it is. Her dress is heavy. Layers on layers, even in the heat. Corset, petticoats, bodice, apron. Clothes designed not for comfort, but for modesty, for reputation, for respectability in a world that still sees her as property unless proven otherwise. She works in silence, or she hums, or she prays. Childbirth? Out here, it's a battlefield. No hospital, no anesthesia, no guarantee. She gives birth in her home, on her bed, or on the floor if things move too fast. A midwife if she's lucky, a neighbor if she's not. A husband holding her hand, or waiting outside, terrified, if he's alive and sober. Many don't make it. Babies or mothers. And the ones who do, they go right back to work days later, stitches still fresh, breasts aching, sleep a distant dream. No maternity leave on the frontier, no rest, just another mouth to feed, another soul to protect. And still, women keep the family stitched together, often quite literally. They sew, patch, mend, boil laundry until their hands crack and their backs scream. They teach the children to read if they can. They read the Bible aloud at night. They tell stories, pass down memories, keep old letters folded in hidden boxes, and somehow remember everyone's birthday even though no one remembers theirs. If their husband dies, and many do, she becomes the head of the household. But she was that already, in everything but name. Some women run boarding houses, taking in strangers, cooking 3 meals a day, cleaning up after men who barely say thank you. Some become teachers, strict but kind, educated enough to spell, but tough enough to break up a schoolyard fight without flinching. Others are homesteaders, alone or with children, running a farm with no one else around for miles. They fix fences, shoot coyotes, birth calves, and still manage to boil potatoes by dusk. And a few work in saloons, dancers, entertainers, barmaids, often looked down on by society, but working just as hard, sometimes harder, to survive. They know how to talk fast, duck fists, and smile like they mean it. Every woman in the West knows how to hide fear behind her eyes. Now let's talk about children. Those small, hopeful creatures who grow up far too fast under skies too wide. There's no such thing as a carefree childhood out here. A baby might die from fever. A toddler might fall into the creek. A 6-year-old might already be hauling water from the well or helping to grind corn. By age 9, a child's hands are calloused. By 12, they can ride a horse, gut a fish, and maybe fire a rifle, if the families had to teach them. School exists in some towns, but not always. One-room schoolhouses mostly. A dozen kids of all ages sharing benches and inkwells, reciting arithmetic and scripture. You memorize things. You recite things. You get whipped if you don't. And for many, school stops around age 10 or 11, because work calls. There's farming to do, cattle to herd, babies to care for, parents to help. No time for essays when the harvest is coming and the barn roof is falling in. Toys are simple. Carved animals, dolls made from rags, a ball made of twine. Entertainment is found in the dirt, the creek, the clouds. You grow up watching animals get slaughtered, watching neighbors die, watching your parents age twice as fast as they should. But you also grow up resilient. You run barefoot through the fields. You laugh too loud. You fall in love with a stray dog. You help your sister chase fireflies in a gorm. Children in the West are both innocent and old at the same time. They ask deep questions. They cry hard and recover faster than grown-ups. They live close to death, so they cling hard to life. Family is complicated. Blood means everything and nothing. Some families are close, packed together in tiny cabins, sleeping side by side on straw, sharing every meal, every breath, every secret. Others are splintered, lost to war, sickness, crime, distance. A man might leave for gold and never come back. A mother might send her child to relatives 3 states over because they can't afford another winter. Adoption is informal. A neighbor takes in a boy whose parents died in a wagon accident. An old widow raises her niece like her own. No paperwork, just survival. And still, families love. Fiercely, roughly, imperfectly. A mother will ride 10 miles in a storm to fetch a doctor for her child. A father will work his hands raw to buy his daughter a new pair of shoes. A brother will stand in front of a bullet. A sister will chase off a thief with a kitchen knife. The home may be falling apart. The floor may be dirt. The roof may leak. But inside there's warmth. There's soup on the stove. There's a baby snoring. A song hummed low. A fire crackling. There's hope. Worn thin, maybe, but still there. Because even in all the harshness, all the danger and dirt and heartbreak, people in the West believe in family. They have to. It's the only thing they can control. The only thing they can hold on to when everything else slips away. So tonight, when the wind howls and the cold creeps in, a woman wraps her arms around her children and whispers, "Sleep now." And she means it like a spell, like a shield, like the only thing standing between her babies and the big, hard world waiting just outside that thin wooden door. Afternoon in the Wild West isn't the quiet part of the day. It's the dangerous part. The sun is high and hot, baking the roofs, blistering the dirt, pulling sweat out of you even when you're standing still. The work continues, always. But by this hour, tempers are shorter, muscles are tired, and if there's trouble coming, this is usually when it starts. You can feel it in the way the town breathes, slower, tenser, like it's holding its ribs. The air tastes like grit and gun oil. The animals are quiet. Even the dogs nap with one eye open, because people are worn out by now. Worn out by work, by heat, by injustice that wears a badge or hides behind a bank ledger. Let's talk about conflict. Because out here, it's not just about barroom brawls and shootouts at high noon. It's about power and who has it and who's willing to take it. In some towns, it's the law who controls everything. The sheriff, the marshal, the judge. But lawmen weren't always noble, and justice was rarely blind. Some were heroes. Others were brutes with shiny stars. A sheriff might protect the town, or he might protect the man who paid him more. Bribes happen. So do accidents. A rancher's fence mysteriously burns down. A squatter disappears. A witness falls off a horse and breaks his neck, even though there wasn't a horse anywhere near. There's no FBI, no cameras, no oversight. Just a few dusty pages in a ledger and a jury of 6 men who drink at the same saloon as the defendant. Crime is constant, big and small. Theft of cattle, of horses, of land. Someone moves your fence line one night and suddenly they own 10 more acres. Good luck proving it. Assault, a punch, a threat, or worse. Women learn to carry knives, or wear layers thick enough to stop a grab. Murder, blunt and final, sometimes over cards, sometimes over nothing. The graveyard always has a fresh plot waiting. And then there's vigilante justice, when the town gets tired of waiting for the law to catch up. A man is dragged from his bunk, tied to a post, and beaten, or hanged. No trial, no judge. Just 12 angry neighbors and a rope someone already had in their wagon. Sometimes they're right, sometimes not. But out here, justice isn't clean. It's convenient. Racism is everywhere, unhidden, brutal. Black families are pushed to the outskirts of town. Mexican laborers are underpaid, overworked, and told to be grateful. Native Americans? Treated like ghosts or enemies, depending on the day. Even freedmen, veterans of the Union Army, are denied land or credit. Chinese immigrants who helped build the railroad are spit on, forced into ghettos, excluded by law. Signs go up in shop windows. No Chinamen, no Indians, no colored. Tensions rise, fights break out, and the town quietly pretends nothing happened. Women face injustice too. No vote, no real rights. If a husband beats his wife, it's called domestic discipline. If she fights back, it's hysteria. Widows are pitied. Single women are whispered about. Divorced women, outright scandal. Afternoons are when you see the cracks in society, wide and deep and yawning like a canyon. In the fields, sharecroppers sweat in silence. Tenants harvest someone else's crop, knowing they'll still owe more than they make. In the mines, bosses demand longer hours with less pay, and the men can't strike. Not unless they're ready to be replaced by desperate newcomers, with stronger backs and weaker bargaining power. Workers argue, employers shout. A pickaxe goes missing. A bottle gets broken. Someone threatens to bring a gun to work tomorrow. Everyone laughs, but not really. Even among neighbors, disputes fester. Over water rights. Over wandering livestock. Over a tree whose shadow now covers someone else's garden. Land is everything. But boundaries are fluid, and the map changes depending on who's drawing it. If you're a farmer, the sun beating down this late in the day can ruin your crop, dry out the soil before your seeds even root. You pray for clouds. You glance at the sky like it's a jury about to deliver a sentence. If you're in a railroad town, the arrival of a train in the afternoon means more than passengers. It means a wave of travelers, drunks, and strangers, each one a potential friend, thief, lover, or murderer. You watch them step down from the car like they're walking into a saloon filled with opportunity. If you're a mother, the afternoon is when children get restless. They wander too close to danger. They sneak out to swim in the quarry. They play too loud near the horses and nearly get trampled. And if you're a child, this is when the chores pile up. Water to fetch, floors to sweep, chickens to chase. Playtime is a myth told by people who've never had to walk 3 miles for firewood. Afternoon is also when the town comes to life, socially. People finish their tasks and start to gather, not to rest, but to watch, to gossip, to judge. Someone's husband hasn't been seen in a few days. Someone else's daughter is wearing a dress too short. A preacher walks by, nods grimly, says nothing. But the look says everything. Sometimes the conflict is quiet. An icy glance, a whispered word, a long silence that says more than a bullet ever could. Sometimes it's loud. A fight outside the bank, a runaway horse trampling a cart, a drunk thrown into the street and left in the dust like a sack of shame. And sometimes, just sometimes, the whole town watches two men step into the street, hand by hand hovering above worn pistol grips, and no one says a word. You hear it all. The wind, the creak of the signpost, the soft jingle of spurs, and then the crack of a revolver. Just one, maybe two, and it's over. The crowd exhales. Someone checks the body. Someone else shrugs and says, "He had it coming." And life moves on like nothing happened. Because out here, conflict isn't an interruption. It's part of the rhythm, like dust in your teeth, like sweat in your eyes, like regret carried in your boots until they fall apart. As the sun begins to dip lower, the air cools, but the tension doesn't. You don't relax. You don't let your guard down. You just change gears. Because evening's coming, and night is worse. At least in the daylight, you can see what's coming. Night doesn't fall in the Wild West. It crawls in, slow, heavy, and full of teeth. The sun slips behind the hills like it's retreating, not setting. And the moment it's gone, the warmth goes with it. The wind changes, colder, meaner, like it's whispering things you'd rather not hear. And suddenly, every sound matters. You hear the creak of a gate swinging that wasn't swinging before, a dog barking, then whimpering, footsteps that don't match any pair you know. Out here, night is not for sleeping. It's for watching, waiting, listening. You throw another log on the fire if you're lucky enough to have one. Flames flicker against the walls or the inside of your canvas tent, casting long, spidery shadows that twitch when you blink. You stare at them too long, and they start to look like people. Or worse, things. You check your door. You check it twice. If it's a wooden cabin, you brace a chair under the handle. If you're in a tent, you sleep with the opening tied shut tight. And if you're sleeping outside, you keep your back to a rock or a tree, something solid, so at least nothing can sneak up behind you. Maybe you're on a ranch, miles from town, where the only light is the moon, and your only company is the low snort of horses and the crackle of dry grass under something's feet. You hold your rifle close just in case, because you're not just afraid of people, you're afraid of everything. The dark itself feels like it wants in. It presses on the windows, slips under the doorframe, hangs heavy over your bed like a coat you can't take off. It carries old fears, real ones, and for good reason. Fires start easily out here. A knocked-over lantern, a careless cigarette, a spark in a stable. 1 minute you're sleeping. The next, you're choking on smoke and running barefoot across frozen dirt as your whole life burns behind you. There's no fire department, just buckets and neighbors might not come. Then there's crime. Night is when it comes, quiet and fast. A door splinters open. A hand grabs your coat off the peg. A gun is pressed to your ribs before your eyes are even open. Bandits, drifters, men with no name and less mercy. They don't knock. They don't explain. And if you're lucky, they only take what you own. If you're not, you hear the stories. Everyone does. A family robbed and tied up, left in the cold to freeze. A rancher shot in his sleep for a bag of coins no bigger than a biscuit. A child taken from a tent while the mother slept on, dreaming of safety. So no, you don't sleep easy. Even animals turn dangerous at night. Coyotes prowl. Wolves howl. Bears stumble too close to camp. Rats sneak into cabins. Snakes slither into bedrolls, chasing warmth. Your horse snorts and shifts uneasily. You pray it's just nerves, not something worse. And if you're in town, saloons never truly close. Someone's always drinking, fighting, laughing too loud, crying into their hands. You try to sleep, but the floorboards shake with footsteps. You hear a man fall. You hear a woman scream. And then you hear nothing at all. And that silence is worse. Gunshots come with no warning. Sometimes a single pop in the night. Sometimes a full brawl. Either way, you duck instinctively. You don't ask questions. You wait for morning, when someone sweeps blood off the porch and says, "It was bound to happen." And in your room, bedroll, or wagon, you lay very still, not because you're sleeping, but because stillness is safety. You don't snore. You don't stir. You breathe shallow, like the night might hear you. Because in the Wild West, death is not a distant idea. It's not something that happens someday. It's not some grand event, dressed in black, with organ music and flowers. It's now. It's close. It's in the room with you. You've seen too much not to believe it. You remember the young man who died falling off his horse. The girl who slipped into the river and didn't come back up. The gunfighter who bled out leaning against a barrel, hands shaking, eyes wide. You've buried friends. You've watched coffins nailed shut with a little too much hurry. You've heard the minister say, "Ashes to ashes," while the wind blew the words away like they didn't matter. Out here, the graveyard is always fresh. The ground never settles for long. Sometimes it's the people who choose death, quietly, without a note, without a goodbye. Just a rope in a barn or a bottle drained dry. Because out here, life is hard, and some folks just stop fighting. So yes, night carries fear, even if you're tough, even if you don't flinch at gunfire, even if you've got a revolver under your pillow and eyes like ice. You still fear night, because everyone does. It's when the world reminds you that no matter how fast you ride, how deep you dig, or how strong you think you are, you're just a body, a soft, breakable body. In a hard, unbreakable land, you think about death more than you should. Not always dramatically. Sometimes just in passing, when your chest aches, or when you hear a cough that sounds too familiar, or when you see the doctor riding fast toward someone else's door. You wonder, if I don't wake up, who will bury me? And the truth is, someone will. Quickly, quietly. Maybe with tears. Maybe with relief, maybe just with a shrug. Because life keeps moving out here, even when yours stops. And still, despite it all, you try to sleep. You pull your blanket up to your chin, even though it doesn't keep the cold out. You close your eyes, even though you're listening harder than ever. You try to dream, even though your mind is still replaying every shadow you saw before the lamp burned out. Because if you don't sleep, you break. And if you break, the West eats you alive. So you whisper a prayer, or a curse, or nothing at all. And you drift, slowly, carefully, into that uneasy space between sleep and survival. And you hope that morning comes. The fire has burned low now, just a few glowing coals left, cracking softly under their own weight. The dust has settled. The boots have been kicked off, and the stars, cold and endless, are wheeling above like they've done for 1,000 years, uncaring, and yet somehow comforting. And you're still here, still breathing, still lying on that worn-out bed, or curled up in your wagon, or spread across a dusty cot in a room that smells like wood smoke, leather, and whatever dinner was 3 hours ago. You made it through another day in the Wild West, and that's no small thing. You've hauled, cooked, shivered, bled. You've fought off both illness and boredom. You've eaten beans too questionable to describe and slept next to people you wouldn't trust with your boots, let alone your secrets. You've counted stars with a rifle by your side. You've stared down shadows that might have been animals or thieves or something worse. And somehow, you're still standing, or at least lying down in one piece. And maybe that's what life out here really is. Not a grand adventure or a noble story, but endurance. A slow, stubborn refusal to fall apart. Because the Wild West was never about cowboys with perfect hats or gunfights that lasted 10 clean seconds. It was about people. Ordinary, rough-edged, dirty, flawed, real people, surviving in a place that tried very hard to undo them. And yet, they stayed. They built cabins from nothing, carved fences out of frozen ground, planted seeds in dirt that barely remembered rain, raised children, buried parents, lit candles, said prayers, fought with their neighbors and then shared meals with them anyway. They didn't have smartphones or soft beds or central heating or clean water on tap. They didn't have antibiotics or therapy or even the time to feel sorry for themselves. Most days, they were too busy trying not to freeze, starve, or die of dysentery. But they loved. They laughed. They danced in saloons and sang by campfires and carved hearts into tree trunks that are probably still there today, scarred and strong. And every single night, just like this one, they laid down in the dark, knowing full well it could be their last. They didn't always sleep well. They slept lightly, listening to the wind and the wolves and the whiskey-fueled brawl down the street. They slept under stars or under roofs that leaked, or not at all. They slept with shoes on and pistols loaded. They slept through childbirth and pneumonia, through loss and dust storms. But sleep they did, because even the Wild West couldn't take that away. Even here, in the land of broken bones and broken laws, sleep was sacred. And now you're lying there with them, aren't you? Tucked under a thin blanket, the air cold against your face, the smell of the day still clinging to your clothes, sweat, smoke, sour bread, maybe a little blood. Your boots are off, but your muscles are still tense. You're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake. You've felt it all. The raw cold in the morning, the itch of too tight clothes and the ache of a bad night's rest, the sting of hunger, the burn of unfairness, the hard stare of someone who doesn't like you, the soft, desperate hope in someone's voice when they say, "Please, just a little more time." You've seen what it was really like. Not the cleaned-up version, the real thing. And maybe after all that, your bed feels a little softer now, your pillow a little kinder, the silence around you not so lonely, but earned. A silence filled with stories and struggles you didn't live, but now you understand. Because tonight, you've traveled through dust and danger without leaving the room. You've ridden trails and slept beside fires and dodged a few bullets, all without taking a single step. And as your eyes get heavier and your breath begins to slow, maybe something in you finally lets go. Let's go of the day. Let's go of the tension. Let's go of the fear that you missed something, or forgot something, or didn't do enough. Because you did. You did enough. Just by listening. Just by being here. You can rest now. Really rest. No wolves at the door. No splinters in the floor. No freezing draft sneaking through the wall. Just your room. Your bed. Your breath. The hum of whatever soft sound surrounds you. A fan, a breeze, a silence as deep and wide as the prairie. So tonight, as your body softens into stillness and your mind begins to float, I hope you carry this with you. You don't have to haul water in the morning. You don't have to fight off a fever with whiskey. You don't have to sleep with one eye open. You don't have to run from fire. You don't have to bury your boots in straw. You just have to sleep. Soft, slow, safe. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the Wild West. Sleep well.